With Fawkes installed close to the House of Lords, attention now turned towards the gunpowder. Catesby had lodgings in Lambeth, directly across the river from the Houses of Parliament. As the plotters began to source the gunpowder, it was stored piecemeal in Catesby's house. But then an opportunity arose that would take the plotters even closer to their target.
And Fawkes reports that a coal merchant is moving out of a vault actually under the Lords. So, Percy takes up the lease of the vault as well.
Percy's cover story for renting the storeroom was that his wife was about to join him in London, and he would therefore need extra storage space.
The famous cellar in which Guy Fawkes placed all the gunpowder was actually not a cellar at all. It was on the ground floor. It was pretty ramshackle, so it was a rather good choice.
But how would the gunpowder be smuggled into the House of Lords? We're here in Lambeth, on the south bank of the river, just across from the Houses of Parliament. It was here that Robert Catesby had his lodgings, and from here that the gunpowder was rowed over the river. If you think of the Thames then, alive with trade and traffic, one more small boat going back and forth would never have been noticed.
And they focus on stockpiling gunpowder in the vault.
By July 1605, after many trips to and fro from Lambeth, a total of 36 barrels of gunpowder had been amassed.
Effectively, with the gunpowder in the vault, everything is ready.
But this strike at the heart of government would have gone much deeper. The terrorist attack on the state opening of Parliament would have killed the king and also created a political vacuum.
69 very senior men would be there, plus in attendance all the senior 12 judges of England and their legal attendants. So you would have had the majority of the bishops of the Church of England, the members of the Privy Council, the majority of the English aristocracy, and the whole of the leaders of the legal system. So you would have had a very, very substantial number of the political and landowning elite of England immediately wiped out.
The king would have been seated here, in the centre of the House of Lords. Directly below the chamber were the 36 barrels of gunpowder amassed by the plotters. In today's House of Lords, the space where the gunpowder was stored forms part of a maintenance workshop on the lower ground level. 400 years ago on this site, the guards would have seen a surprisingly large quantity of firewood here, on this spot. Their suspicions were further aroused when it was discovered that Thomas Percy had leased the space. He was a suspected Catholic agitator. When this news reached King James, he immediately ordered a second search of the area by his guards.
And they encounter Fawkes emerging from the vault, dressed, booted and spurred. And because he is dressed strangely for such an hour, they arrest him and they find the gunpowder.
The great explosion had been averted.
There are many estimates of how much gunpowder was there. It's said to be 36 barrels, and that could be anywhere from 1 to 3 tons of gunpowder. Even 1 ton would have been complete overkill if what you wanted to do was to kill the people in the room above. It would actually burn in a fraction of a second and turn to heat and gas. And that heat and gas then would try to expand. The room being 400 cubic metres, this gas would try to expand into 4,000 cubic metres. What that will do is put pressure on the walls, but they're 9 feet thick. The weakest part of that room is the ceiling. And when that breached, it would be thrown upwards with huge force, and anyone above it would have been killed instantly.
On the evening of November the 5th, Catesby and his men arrived at a drinking house in Warwickshire to meet with a party of Catholics they hoped would join them in rebellion.
And at the Red Lion Dunchurch, they give the news to the assembled Catholic gentry. They don't take it at all well. Most of them vanish as fast as they can into the night. They don't want any part in treason, in rebellion against the king. They don't necessarily believe Catesby. For once, his charisma lets him down. They move on to secure Catholic houses in the Midlands, hoping all the while to drum up support, but all the while losing support.
As Catesby continued his desperate flight north, Guy Fawkes was facing up to his captors. But in these early stages, Fawkes was giving nothing away.
For 24 hours, Guy Fawkes had held out, maintaining his false identity and refusing to name his accomplices. So on the 6th of November, he was brought here, to the Tower of London and to the Lieutenant's lodgings, now called the Queen's House. But still he refused to talk. Even the king was impressed by his self-control, but his captors were after nothing less than a full confession.
Though torture in England was technically illegal, its use was permitted under exceptional circumstances. And by now, King James was losing patience. He wrote this letter authorizing the use of torture against Fawkes.
If he will not otherwise confess, the gentler tortures are to be first used unto him, and so by degrees, until the ultimate is reached. And so God speed your good work. James.
Of all the forms of torture then in existence, the rack was said to be the worst. It seems there was only one in England, kept here in the Tower of London. On the 6th of November, King James signed the warrant putting Guy Fawkes to the torture, and all the evidence suggests it was to the rack he was brought. By the 7th of November, he'd revealed his true identity. 2 days later, he'd revealed everything else. His suffering can be charted in his signature. The last was that of a broken man.
This is Coton Court in Warwickshire, home of Robert Catesby's mother and another of the Midlands Catholic strongholds. It was here that Father Garnet and his fellow priests were waiting anxiously for news of the plot.
On the 6th of November, Catesby's servant rode into the courtyard here, bringing a letter from Catesby, revealing the details of the plot and containing the devastating news that the plot had failed. Catesby begged Father Henry Garnet to raise a Catholic rebellion. Hearing this, Garnet was reported to have cried, "We are all utterly undone."
This was the last thing Father Garnet wanted.